receivers left, including a tight end guard, make that Kylan Grant's on the left side. Play action. Minshew feeling pressure, taking a shot downfield for Alec Pierce. He's got it. Yards after the catch, the 10. Angling right for the 5. And he's at the pylon. Touchdown! It's a 42-yard strike. A bomb from Gardner Minshew to Alec Pierce. Touchdown for the Colts. It's 13-3.
That terrific call was made by Matt Taylor. He's the manager of radio production and play-by-play voice of the Indianapolis Colts. Learn more about him and follow him as 9 to Noon does at Maytay Colts, Maytay Colts. And the Minnesota Vikings hooked the Colts here Week 9 and off a Thursday at the Rams and before the Jaguars at U.S. Bank Stadium. Their Vox Frank Frangie joins around the corner in next segment about 10:17, 10:20. And here we go with Friends on Foes. This one is Matt Taylor, play-by-play voice for the Indianapolis Colts. Nice chatting with you, ma'am, and thanks for helping the radio show, Matt.
My pleasure, guys. How are you?
Right on, bud. We're doing well, thank you. Excited for the regular season. Training camp for the Vikings begins today. Pads go on Monday. I know from looking at your Twitter feed, it's report day for the Indianapolis Colts. The calm before the storm, as you wrote it. And once again, the Colts are Week 9 at U.S. Bank Stadium. Now, Texans Vox Marc Vandermeer, who I know you know quite well, he joins 9 to Noon about 20, 25 minutes from now, and he's going to proclaim Houston absolutely is the prohibitive favorite to win your division. Are there arguments you'd pose against that opinion? And good morning.
Well, I would just say right now, I mean, I would agree with Mark, retroactively, I guess, or just in the future. I know what he's going to say, but I think he's right. I mean, until, the Texans are knocked off, they are the champs, and, their roster is really, really strong, and I thought they had a really good offseason, and there's no reason to think that C.J. Stroud's going anywhere, and the foundation they've got with Coach Ryans and just having the quarterback there solidified, I mean, that's everything. So they're going to be in the mix for the very foreseeable future. But, I would say that it's a wide open division. And, the AFC South for a long time, I think nationally has been looked down upon. I mean, really, if you go back to the Peyton Manning years here with the Colts, they would dominate the AFC South, right? They would go 12-4 every year and win the AFC South and host a playoff game. And those franchises just were kind of looking for, solid ground and trying to build their foundation. But I would argue now that the AFC South it's really strong, maybe as strong as it ever has been with, the Jaguars. And I don't think they're going anywhere. Certainly I don't see them falling off a cliff like they did towards the end of last year where they lost 5 of their last 6 games. And I'm more bullish on the Titans than most people. I think Will Levis is going to be better than people think. And then you've got, this franchise here with the Colts that was an eyelash away from being the Texans last year, right? Had they converted a 4th and 3 and not lost 23-19 in Week 18, they're the team that wins the AFC South. And there's the team that everybody's talking about with, what's the ceiling with Anthony Richardson? If they can win the division without their franchise quarterback, imagine how good they're going to be with him when he comes back next year. So they were so close last year, finishing 9-8, missing out on the playoffs. I think it's added a lot of motivation for this team in the offseason. Plus you factor in just the ceiling and the potential and some of the ungodly plays athletically that Anthony Richardson can make. It certainly, makes for a very anticipated season within the division and, a Colts season that has been looked forward to around these parts for 8-9 months now.
In the truncated time that you had Richardson during the regular season, what are some things that you just know you're going to love moving forward with that quarterback?
Well, this year it's just the dynamic ability of him making plays, and then you just pair him up with Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor last year obviously had his off-the-field saga, a contract dispute, and however you want to put it, starting the year on PUP, just a lot of, off-the-field concerns you had with Jonathan Taylor. He got locked up, and then when he came back, or when I should say when he came off of PUP, that's when Anthony Richardson went down. It was Week 5. So, Paul, those two guys, believe it or not, Richardson and Taylor together, they played a combined 2 snaps last year on a game field. I think they have the potential to be the deadliest and most dynamic quarterback running back duo in the NFL. And in order for those guys to reach their ceiling and their fullest potential in the running game, they got to get more out of the passing game. The Colts need to be more threats on the outside of the numbers, and push the ball down the field in order for the box to be lightened up in terms of the numbers by the defense for Richardson and Taylor to take full advantage of that. So it sounds cliche, and oftentimes you hear, we've got to run to set up the pass. In the case of the Colts, they got to be more threats in the passing game to set up the running game so that Taylor and Richardson can feast on defenses and make things really unpredictable for the Colts on offense. But that to me is the most exciting part about this offense for next year is you have a fully healthy Richardson and, knock on wood, a fully healthy Taylor together for most of the season.
I love that. You laid that out beautifully. And with the receivers, the identity of the receiving corps clearly is Michael Pittman. Now, a career best 109 receptions for Michael last year. He's from that ballyhooed 2020 receiver draft. Justin Jefferson was also in it. And Michael was dynamite last year, but is it fair to say he's had a topsy-turvy career?
Well, I think you could probably throw in Alec Pierce, another member of the wide receiver core for the Colts. They have really, I would say, the quarterback carousel for this team and the franchise since Andrew Luck retired. It obviously hasn't helped. So to bring back some stability, knowing that you've got one guy from last year that's coming back this year, that hasn't happened for the Colts since 2015, 2016, where they have the same quarterback week 1 in consecutive years. That's insane. I think the Colts are getting a dose of what it kind of meant to be every other franchise in the NFL when they had so much consistency there with Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. But I think there's more there, to your point, in Michael Pittman Jr.'s game. He's always going to be a high-volume catch receiver. Last year he was top 5 in catches, as you chronicled, over 100 catches for the season. What he wants for himself, and quite frankly what they need out of him for this offense to really hum next year, is they need more big plays, just from everybody, but certainly Pittman. More yards per catch, more touchdowns, more run after the catch. He's a really physical player. He's just perfect for what this offense has needed from him the last couple of years with the changing of quarterbacks in the last couple of seasons. He's really physical. He's a willing blocker. He buys into the offense in terms of whatever's asked of him. But if you ask him, he thinks he's a elite receiver, and I don't think the nation really believes that or buys into that based on the production. But I think you're going to see more out of him in terms of his overall arsenal and versatility with a healthy Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Now,
Joe Flacco currently is in the mix as a backup, and seriously, what a wonderful run the former Super Bowl MVP has had, Matt, and what a great mind to have behind Richardson, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Joe Flacco is a great story. You guys know it. I mean, he's sitting on his couch. He's hanging out with his kids for the first 2/3 of last year, then gets a call by the Browns and just comes in and, is able to throw for, in 6 games in the regular season last year. He threw for over 300 yards in 4 of those, guided the Browns to the playoffs. But I think he knows that, come into this situation for the Colts, Anthony Richardson still has to prove that he can stay healthy. And Colts fans don't want to hear that, but until he does, that's going to be a question mark. And I think Joe Flacco knows that, hey, this is a good opportunity for me in case I'm needed. I showed last year I can play. And the best part is, in terms of Joe Flacco, he can still push the ball down the field. He takes chances. He lives and dies by those chunk plays, which is what Shane Steichen, the head coach and the offensive play caller, that's what he believes in. And also, too, Joe Flacco, and getting to know him a little bit here in the offseason, he just has this, I don't know if this makes sense, but he just has this uncanny ability to not overcomplicate the game. And I think with the 22-year-old quarterback like Anthony Richardson, when he only played in 4 games last year and your head's still kind of spinning, and going into this season, it's kind of like rookie season 2.0, it's nice to have somebody that is thrown for over 44,000 career yards, passing yards, to be able to come in and say, hey, I know playing quarterback is tough. It's complicated. You got so much stuff to worry about on and off the field. but sometimes just throw it to the open guy. And I think that's what Joe Flacco can do with Anthony Richardson in terms of not overcomplicating the game. It's okay to just make a basic read, keep the chains moving, keep us on schedule, and then intermix what you need to have done within this offense from your playmaking ability. And that's why I think the Colts are trying to get out of Anthony Richardson this year is they want him to be dynamic, but they also want him to be safe and make the smart reads and that accelerated growth. I think that's where Joe Flacco comes into play big time.
90 seconds left, and you get it all. Two quickies here. The rookie, Adonai Mitchell, the Texas rookie. What have you liked about him? Granted, pads aren't on, but what have you liked about Mitchell so far?
Yeah, it just looks like an absolute steal in the draft. First-round talent, first-round grade. The Colts got him well into the second round. The guy is smooth. He's athletic. Shane Steichen said the other day that he makes the catch at the top of his route. He is a really polished player for a guy that's coming out of college and hadn't played a game yet. So, again, he kind of factors into what I talked about earlier, necessary for the Colts to be more dynamic and more of a threat outside and push the ball outside the numbers. That's where he comes into play big time for this team.
And Leatu Latu, the former Bruin. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the Colts think that he's their missing piece. Last year, the Colts had 51 sacks as a defense, which was top 5, but also a franchise record for the franchise since they moved to Indianapolis. So an Indy Colts sack record. But they just need more overall disruptions, more overall pressures and hurries. And I think that the Colts think with him being the first defensive player off the board, believe it or not, at 15, that he is that missing guy that can just go win in high leverage situations, disrupt the quarterback, create a takeaway and just make more plays and bigger moments for this team next year.
Right on, man. It's a great getting to know you, and I look forward to seeing you Week 9 during the season. Have a fun season, and good luck to your Colts, okay?
You too. Go Vikings up there, and absolutely look forward to it.
Yes, sir. See you later. Matt Taylor, into his 7th year as play-by-play voice of the Indianapolis Colts. We have the cash thing right now, and around the corner, we stick with the AFC South, and to learn more about the Jaguars.
The Fan, along with BigDeck.com, want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com. Use the keyword check. The keyword is check. You might win $1,000 with the keyword check at KFAN.com.
First down at the 26-yard line of the Colts. The clock is at 4:15.
You want to snap this with under 5 seconds on the play clock.
Running play. This is Etienne. Tries to bounce it outside. He's got a little bit of room. 20, 15-yard line. Travis Etienne into the end zone. Touchdown. They have extended the lead. How good is that? 26-yard touchdown run.
Frank Frangie into his 11th year as a voice of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Vikings catch the Jags at U.S. Bank Stadium, Week 10, and our Friends on Foes series this week continues with Frank. Thanks very much for joining. And what excites you about the 2024 Jacksonville Jaguars? Just stream the consciousness.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for having me. Well, good to talk to you. And look, this in the 30 years there's been a franchise here, this thing hasn't had great trajectory to start a season very often. It's been a struggling franchise. Everybody knows that. It's one of the more struggling franchises in the league. I would think this might be the best roster they've gone into a season with in probably over 10 years. This is they've had back-to-back winning seasons, which hasn't happened very often. They won the division 2 years ago. Probably should have won it last year. Finished 1-5 after a great 8-3 start. Collapsed a little bit. I think the roster is better. They've extended Trevor Lawrence. He's going to be here for the long haul. They extended their pass rusher, Josh Hines-Allen, who's going to be here for the long haul. They just did a deal with Tyson Campbell, their best cover corner. So I think it's a young roster. They've had back-to-back winning seasons. I think they've learned from some mistakes. Look, there's some optimism here, Paul, and that hasn't always been the case. I can tell you that.
How good do you think Trevor Lawrence can be?
He's got to quit. The biggest mistake or the biggest step Trevor has to take is he's got to learn what plays not to try to make. Look, the goods are there, man. This is a 6'6" guy with a rifle arm, and he's extremely athletic. He's a hard worker. He's a good teammate. The hardware and the software are there. Trevor has been so good his whole career. I mean, before he got in the NFL. And the players those wide receivers at Clemson could run by the Wake Forest defensive backs. His wide receivers in high school could run by the defensive backs. So this is a different league, bro, as you know. And he has to learn that part of it. He has to learn sometimes the play isn't there, throw it in the stands and come back for second down. Sometimes don't hold the ball so long. Trevor held the ball too long. That's why he led the league in turnovers, and that's why he was injured 4 times last year, Paul. He had an ankle, a knee, a shoulder, and a concussion because he holds it a step too long. So he's got to learn what plays not to try to make, and I think he's going to be really good. I'm around him a lot. All the things you see in the guys that are really good in this league. They understand each other. They're humble. They're workers, and they got all the good. So, look, I'm biased, right? He's our guy. But I think Trevor's going to be really good.
Now, the offensive line coach for the Jaguars is Phil Rauscher, who was here just a few years ago with the Minnesota Vikings. Wonderful, wonderful coach, wonderful person. And, I felt middle of last year it was important to Phil to find a way to get Ezra Cleveland. So the Vikings traded Ezra Cleveland to Jacksonville and elevated Dalton Reisner here, and he started the rest of the games. So Ezra, I would imagine he's slotted at this stage to be the starting left guard. How did Ezra shake out for you last year?
Played really well. In fact, they signed. Remember, he was a free agent at the end of the year, and one of their priorities after trading for him was to make sure they got him signed, which they did. Paul, he's athletic. He can run. The one thing, Doug Peterson likes screen passes. He likes a horizontal game with a lot of crossers. Your offensive linemen have to be able to run. I think Ezra's the most athletic one they've got here. What they loved about him is the ability to get downfield. I don't know that he's a mauling right guard physical guy like some of the right guards in the leagues are, but his left guards that get out and run, they really like him. He's a good guy, very athletic. There was 1 or 2 screen passes last year. They'd throw a screen pass to ETN, and you'd look, and it was a big gainer. Man, you'd look downfield, and Ezra's right there with Travis. I mean, they're the 2 guys down the field. So he's a really good athlete. He's a guy who, you're right, Phil really liked and Phil pushed for him, and he'll be a big one. The offensive line struggled last year. Make no mistake about that. That was probably the weakest part of the football team, and they've got to play better. That group's got to play better. They went and got Mitch Morse as their center, the veteran out of Buffalo. Obviously, Luke Fortner had been the center, and he really struggled last year. But they really like Ezra Cleveland, a very athletic left guard. And you're right. He's going to be a big part of what they do here.
Frank Frangie, play-by-play voice for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Adversarial updates continuing 9 to noon. Vikings and Jags at U.S. Bank Stadium, week number 10. Rookie wideout Brian Thomas, just another weapon for Trevor Lawrence. I like the Gabe Davis signing a lot. I love the Christian Kirk signing last year, and he came through, or whenever they signed Kirk, he came through with some big numbers and was super key. But with Brian Thomas, where does he fit in, and what do you think?
What they haven't had, Paul, is someone to stretch the field. Those crossing routes to Christian Kirk and to Evan Ingram work better if you can stretch the field. They haven't had that here, honest to God, since Jimmy Smith in the 90s. They just haven't stretched the field. Well, both Gabe Davis is a Buffalo Bill and Brian Thomas Jr. at LSU, they both averaged like 17 yards a catch. They both scored a lot of touchdowns. They're 2 guys that can change. The hope is, let's say if it plays out that way, is that they're 2 guys that change how you play defense against the Jaguars. That's the idea, is that if you can back the defense up a little bit, and if they're worried about the deep ball, then those crossers to Christian Kirk are there all day long. Then that mid-range game to Evan Ingram's there. Then the running lanes for ETN are there. They've got good skill, but someone's got to stretch the field and take the top off the defense. And both of those guys, Gabe Davis is a Bill, Brian in college, why he was the first-round pick, have showed the ability to do that. That, I'm telling you, Paul, that's one of the biggest changes in this team, and that's the hope that they can throw the deep ball a little bit because that changes everything offensively.
What, Frank, what happened at the end of last year, 1-5 to finish the season?
Yeah, number one, they got hurt and didn't play very well. I can tell you this, and you don't lose because of injuries because it's always next man up and you get hurt in the league. They were 8-3 and driving for a first possession touchdown against the Bengals when Christian Kirk went down for the year. He was their big signee the year before. He is a leader. He's a fantastic receiver. And from that point forward, they were 1-5 and weren't a very good football team. Now, I'm not saying it happened because one player got hurt. It's way more than that. Trevor played through some injuries. But you've seen enough of this, Paul. We all have. Team loses its confidence. It loses one game. Then it loses again. Then another guy gets hurt. Then there's some chirping a little bit, probably on the sidelines. then you've lost. Then you're desperate. Now you're playing tight because goodness, you had the division sealed up 11 weeks in. Your magic number was 1 or whatever, and now all of a sudden you can't get out of your own way. The pressure outside of the building, the pressure league wide, and they collapsed a little bit. They would tell you that. They learned from it, I think. Let's hope. So I think a combination of injuries. Trevor played hurt most of the year. Lost Christian Kirk. Lost Zay Jones. Ridley was in and out of the lineup. I think that affected them. And I think they lost some confidence down the stretch. They were just desperately trying to get the regular season over, and if they could sneak into the tournament. You've seen this, Paul. You catch your breath, right? You catch your breath and say, okay, everybody's undefeated now. Let's start over. And they never could get to that point. It was a combination of all those things. It really was.
Lastly, Frank, I know you are an elite SEC mind. So this may be low-hanging fruit because they're always good, but is Georgia absolutely the best in the SEC this year?
Here's the thing, and I love my SEC football, Paul. You know me well. Georgia's the best team. Georgia and Ohio State probably are the 2 best teams in the country. Texas is really good, really good. The question is, and this is my SEC snobbery coming out, so indulge me, all right? But in the past, Texas could beat Oklahoma, and Paul, the next 4 games were Iowa State and Oklahoma State and Baylor and whoever. Mm-hmm. Well, now you can beat Georgia, and your next 4 games are Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Tennessee. It doesn't let up. The SEC is more like a professional league than any league I've ever seen. So Georgia and Texas have the 2 best teams. I think Georgia's got the best team. They've got Carson Beck back. He might be the first overall pick, might win the Heisman Trophy. He's a really good quarterback, big, tall, NFL-looking guy. But Texas is really good, too. Quinn Ewers is back. They've got a good team. Stark's a very good coach. Can Texas manage the game-in, game-out rigors of the SEC that these SEC teams have learned to do like the pro teams do? That's the biggest question. I think those are the 2 best teams. Ole Miss is a top 6, top 7 team, better than they've been in a long time. Alabama's really interesting with Saban gone and Kalen DeBoer there. But I think Georgia's the team to beat with the possible exception of Texas. It's going to be a good league again, I can tell you that.
Frank, that was fantastic, and look forward to seeing you during the season and maybe chatting with you the week of the game against the Jags. Have a wonderful day, okay?
We'd love to do it, Paul. Take care. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
No problem. See you, bud. That's Frank Frangie, the box for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Still 2 teams to go in the AFC South. Mike Keith from the Tennessee Titans should join tomorrow, or Friday. But when we return, Marc Vandermeer, the play-by-play voice for the Houston Texans, describes why the Texans legitimately are a Super Bowl contender. They're also on the Vikings schedule week 3. We'll be right back. Here comes Marc Vandermeer, the play-by-play voice for the Houston Texans. The Minnesota Vikings hook the Houston Texans week 3 as we continue our adversarial updates with some of the best boxes in the NFL, including Marc Vandermeer at Texans Voice via Twitter. And week 3 against these highly touted Houston Texans. Is that fairly stated, Mark? The highly touted Houston Texans?
Yeah, they're highly touted, Paul. It's a strange place to be after where we were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even last year when there was a lot of mystery around D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud and how everything would work out. It worked out really well in year 1, but now you have instant expectations going into year 2 of this era, and it's going to be interesting to see how they respond because this is the first time they ever finished first with a 17-game schedule. As you know, you have 3 games affected by that. That means they're playing the Chiefs, Ravens, and Cowboys as a result of that, in addition to everybody else, so it's going to be tough.
Mark, Diggs, Daniil, and much more with your team coming up momentarily, but for the purpose of our audience here in the cornfields or those listening via the free iHeartRadio app, Mark's dream was to be a team play-by-play guy, and he went to selling radio and TV advertising in his 20s, and it led him to AM 1170, WJCC, just south of Boston. Mark, what happened from there because said dream has been realized?
Yeah, it's so funny you know this tough. I did a high school game as a color commentator. I knew nothing. I was filling in. I didn't even really want to do it. I wasn't sure about it. But at halftime of that game, Paul, I realized I want to be a play-by-play announcer, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to do it. And I worked my way up from the very bottom. I mean, high school games, I did games from a car on a hill sometimes, and that's probably not NFL-worthy broadcast conditions. But you know what? I just worked my way up little by little, and here I am, and I know here you are as well, and it's so much fun to be a part of this league and broadcast these games every Sunday.
What was your take, with the pandemic season? Okay, so no fans at Reliant, no fans at U.S. Bank Stadium, but the home games were awful. Okay, now granted, we lost more than we won, but it just, with no fans there, was terrible. But calling the road games off the two TVs, where you get the TV copy, then the NFL would provide the live all 22. What'd you think of that?
Well, the thing that made it workable, I thought, was that we got the audio from the field. We could get the TV effects. So they had the big parabolic sound effects microphones, and I could hear that line of scrimmage and whatever fake noise they were piping into the road stadium right in my ear. So it really sounded good in my ear, and it felt like I was right down there with them. And honestly, Paul, the view I was getting on the All-22 TV monitor was very similar to what I get in my binoculars. I call the game with binoculars. The frustrating thing is between plays, you get whatever they're looking at. I like to look around on the sideline and see different things maybe with my binoculars. But I didn't think it was too bad, especially in a season where we were so terrible. Andre Ware and I were talking about it because he was doing ESPN games from his house, that when you're terrible and you lose a game, it's nice to just be able to drive home instead of take the plane ride back. But this is a luxury problem. I thought it was okay doing games like that, but, nothing beats being there in the stadium and just feeling the air on your face and being a part of the environment.
When you, so from AM 1170 WJCC to the Central Michigan Chippewas, or where you called their basketball games, I think they were 3-23. After that, you get UMass at the right time. You get the Miami Hurricanes at the right time. And you've been the only voice in the history of Houston Texans football, which I think is really cool. Mark, when you go for these jobs, what are some keys to getting them? I mean, you're gifted as a play-by-play describer, but it requires more, especially these days, right, when it comes to getting these jobs?
Well, I talk about this in my book, Go Get Your Dream Job, available on Amazon, Paul. There it is, a plug. How about that?
Yes.
And getting these jobs is really tough because I know you feel this way too. I mean, this is like a political position. You're always running for re-election when you're the voice of a team. You want to be able to do this forever, preferably. And I've always wanted to be the voice of a team, not really one of these national guys, because you have no dog in the fight in a national game. It's fun,
Agreed.
But you're always rooting for the team that's behind to catch up. So, I always wanted to be the voice of a team, and every job I've gotten, I've really felt attached to that situation. But to get it, I've flown myself places. The UMass job, there wasn't even an opening when I didn't apply. I just made a pitch that I'll sell their advertising and do their games, and they really needed to grow as a network at the time when Calipari was there. Miami, I flew myself in. I met with the AD on a cold call, went to his office, no appointment, went to the GM of the radio station, no appointment, literally stalked him outside the station on a Monday morning. So I did stuff like that, crazy stuff. Don't try this at home kind of stuff, but you do have to try things. I always tell people, if you're applying for a job that's not a traditional, engineer, lawyer, something like that, there are no rules. We get people applying for marketing jobs here. They just send a resume and wait. What? Be a marketer. Show us what you got. Send me a pizza. Do something. Differentiate yourself. Stand out. That's what I always tried to do when I was chasing play-by-play jobs.
That'll preach for sure. What's the name of that book again, and where can we get it?
Go Get Your Dream Job on Amazon. It's Amazon, and, I hate to do this to local bookstores, but it's the biggest bookstore in the world, So I felt like I had to publish on Amazon.
Okay, last one outside of your football covenant. So you started with UMass basketball when Marcus Camby was there, right?
Correct.
Oh, wow. So then you go to the Canes. And, correct me if I'm wrong here, but was that like Clinton Portis, Ken Dorsey, Ed Reed, Andre Johnson? Like, that was it that unbelievable team?
Yes, all those guys. In fact, Paul, I get there in 1999, my first ever Hurricane interaction. They're doing a scrimmage in August, and Andre Johnson is torching people, and he's a true freshman, and he looks kind of like he looks today. I mean, honestly, day one, he could have played in the league probably. He was that good. But they redshirted him because they had Reggie Wayne, Santana Moss. They had Darryl Jones, who played in the NFL for a while, Andre King, who played in the NFL. They had 4 guys in front of him who were NFL players.
Wow.
So they sat him down for a year, and then he really got going in 2000 and 2001 when he was the MVP of the national championship game. But yeah, I was around all those guys, and those teams were incredibly deep, as you know, and it was such a joy to be a part of it and get the national championship ring as their announcer. But then I got the job here, and I couldn't turn down the NFL. It was just too good. I'd never even been to Texas much, but now I'm a Texan, baby. I learned all about what it is to live here and be a part of this thing.
Mark, with all due respect, Stephon Diggs kind of worked his way out of here. Seems like the same thing happened with Buffalo. So this is going to be a honeymoon, adrenaline rush time for Diggs with the Texans, and the games don't count yet. But just like, what do you know about Steph? Obviously, he's a high-end player. I mean, I've had people tell me, in my years calling the Vikings, like him, Adam Thielen, and Randy Moss, they're 3 of the best route runners in the history of the NFL. And now he's with the Texans, balling with C.J. Stroud. What do you know about Steph, and how much do you trust the situation?
All right, so the first thing that popped out to me in OTA's minicamp was the route running. I've seen elite receivers here, DeAndre Hopkins, Andre Johnson. Diggs is amazing, elite. You guys know this in Minnesota, of course, but to see it up close like that, I've seen him in games, I've broadcast games where he was a part of it, but when you see things in practice that make your eyes pop out, it's highly notable. And his attitude here, I don't know anything about the past other than what I read, but man, he's just one of the guys here. He and the other receivers were sitting around a lunchroom table the other day, just yucking it up, having a great time, and you would think they had been together for years. And I think with this quarterback, this group, this positive environment with DeMeco Ryans, I think he'll be really good. It's a 1-year situation. He knows it. Everybody knows it. But, man, to see Stroud and him hook up. Today they had a couple of passes in practice. I mean, they were throwing darts today to him, and it was wonderful to see. I think it's going to be really fruitful for him here, and we'll see where it goes after this season. But right now, everybody's here for it.
That play action of Joe Mixon's going to be pretty nice, isn't it?
Yeah, that'll be a really good addition as well. Mixon, Dameon Pierce in year 3, can he embrace the zone blocking system? Mixon's such a great one-cut player, but, man, they've got receivers for days, Paul. They've got Nico Collins, 1,300 yards last year, Tank Dell, Robert Woods. I think Robert Woods still makes this team. He's so valuable to them. Ben Skoranek, who's a Swiss Army knife at receiver, and the list goes on. Noah Brown made huge plays for the Texans last year. They're very deep. They're about 9 deep right now at wide receiver. These are going to be tough cuts.
Marc Vandermeer, the play-by-play voice of the Houston Texans since the inception of the squad, at Texans Voice via Twitter. We're doing adversarial updates, and today we are on the AFC South. Who's the team to beat in your division?
Well, I think it's the Texans, but I always say don't sleep on the Colts, and don't sleep on the Jags either, but to me, the Colts could be really dangerous if Anthony Richardson pans out even remotely. I mean, last year with Gardner Minshew, they're within inches of beating the Houston Texans to win a playoff berth, and as it turned out, would have won the division with the Jags losing to the Titans the next day. I know the universe changes, but you have the Jags and Colts both winning 9. The Texans won 10. So you didn't have that 13-win team in the division, but you had 3 really solid teams, and the Titans are still a mystery without Derrick Henry and Will Levis year 2. We'll see, but they do have some talent. They added some players. I just think those 3 teams are going to, knock each other around a bit, and we'll see who comes out on top. Everybody here, and by everybody I mean media, fans, they kind of think, oh yeah, AFC South, you'll win that. Really? I mean, you have to earn this. We all know how it goes, and just because you're really good on paper and with the additions they have and adding Hunter, like you said, and other players, I just think your work is cut out for you in the division always. I mean, these games count twice. You know how important they are.
Now, Daniil, a Houston native, a physical specimen, man. I mean, you've now seen it, and you've seen him on the field. What do you think of Daniil?
Well, I think with he and Will Anderson as the bookends on the line, it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, Anderson, Defensive Rookie of the Year. You got Hunter on the other side. Derek Barnett, who they added mid to late season last year, was really good rushing the passer. He's got a Super Bowl ring with Philly. Somehow he was, not useful to them. He was plenty useful here. And they even brought Jerry Hughes back because he can still give you some snaps. And a lot of young players, Paul. I love what they've done. They've added a lot of young players and a lot of veterans at similar spots to see, hey, we'll see what works out. Whoever's good enough is going to play. And as we all know, you get injuries. It's a 17-game schedule, war of attrition. So hopefully they're deep enough to survive.
The Texans' offensive line, how squared away is it?
Yeah, Laramie's not practicing yet, but he's doing Rocky-like workouts. I mean, in fact, if I were him, I'd rather be practicing than doing the workouts he's doing as he comes back from injury. But if they were playing this weekend, he would play. He's healthier now than he was at the end of last season when he was playing, so he'll be fine. They start camp early with the Hall of Fame game coming up next week, and you still have 6.5 weeks to go till the opener. If I were them, if I were the coaches, I'd say we don't want to see it for 2 or 3 weeks anyway. So Laramie's good, one of the best left tackles in the league. The rest of the line, I think they're good, but they've done a lot of mixing and matching through last year, and they still survived. They have to find a way to keep the 5 fingers in the glove on the field at all times, as much as possible anyway, because it's just too important. You can't allow pressure up the middle, stuff like that. Juice Scruggs is the center in year 2. He played a bunch last year as the season went on. He started out injured. So they got, like everybody else, they got to stay healthy. I think they have enough talent. They just have to stay healthy and get continuity.
Last one. What did the Vikings get in former Texans Blake Cashman and Jonathan Grenard?
All right, JG had a career year last year. It's like this. If he's healthy, he's going to make plays. He's going to be heard from. He's going to set the edge. He's going to get run stuffs, TFLs. He's not like Hunter in the body type necessarily, but in production he can be as long as he stays healthy, and that's been the key for him. Both players, you know that about Blake. If Blake's healthy, he's a menace. The guy is super fast, too. This time last year, Blake Cashman was running around, picking off passes, being a terror in the linebacking core, and it was making people really notice the ability. And they've got a similar player now this year in Jacob Phillips, who's been banged up to start his career, and we're hoping he has a Blake Cashman kind of resurgence here, or just surges in general for the first time. I think Blake's wonderful, and I hope we don't miss him too much with the talent they have here, but he's a very likable guy, as you know, and I wish him the best.
Is this truly the first time in your career calling Texans games, 20-plus years, that you honestly feel the Texans can go to the Super Bowl?
No, I felt this way in 2012 because they were coming off 2011, the number 2 defense in the league. Watt went nuts in the playoffs, had the big pick 6 against the Bengals, and Matt Schaub was hurt from week 10 on that season. The thinking was if Schaub's healthy, they went with a rookie, TJ Yates, 5th-round draft choice down the stretch that year. The thinking was healthy Schaub gets you to the Super Bowl in 2011. They had 16 Pro Bowlers on that team. 16 guys who either had been, would go, or went that year. So 2012, they start out 11-1, but they lose 3 out of 4 down the stretch. One of them to Christian Ponder and the Vikings, and they flame out. They get to the divisional round, but now they got to play on the road instead of at home, and that's the rest of the story. That team I had really high hopes for. I compared this offseason to that offseason leading into that campaign, but the difference is DeMeco Ryans. It's year 2, and everything's just so positive, and you feel like you have a better quarterback than Matt Schaub at his best, and that's taking nothing away from Schaub. I like Schaub, but this is C.J. Stroud. He was unbelievable last year, one of the greatest rookie seasons in the history of the NFL, so let's see what the sophomore season is like.
Appreciate you, man. Look forward to seeing you up here, and God bless you and your family, and have a wonderful day, okay?
You too, Paul. Can't wait to catch up with you. Looking forward to week 3.
Yes, sir. Marc Vandermeer, the play-by-play voice for the Houston Texans, completing an AFC South middle of a Wednesday. From Matt Taylor with the Indianapolis Colts to Frank Frangie with the Jacksonville Jaguars to Marc Vandermeer with the Texans. We now roll into News du Nord featuring The Con. And it's provided by Canterbury Park and CanterburyPark.com. We have Wednesday racing tonight at 5 o'clock. If you're looking for something to do, stop by the old ball yard, Canterbury Park. 5 o'clock for racing tonight, tomorrow, Saturday at 5, and then Sunday, family day at 1 o'clock.
Oh, it's a 4-day week. Let's go.
Got a 4-day week for you. And CanterburyPark.com, the place to get information into this truncated news, Ducon.
Indeed, just a shorty for you here, and we'll focus on the baseball team. The Phillies win 3-0 over the Twins last night, and it was scoreless. It was a pitcher's duel. This is like Game 7 of the 91 World Series last night, PA. As Simeon Woods Richardson goes 6 in a 3-hit effort with just 1 walk and 5 Ks, and he moves out of the way. Zach Wheeler goes 7 innings, 3 hits, a couple of walks from him. So he goes 7. He moves out of the way. It's onto the bullpen. You got Alcala. You got Jax. Innings apiece. And they're perfect as we enter the 9th. We're looking through Hoffman and Soto on their side of things. And it was Duran. It was Duran who gives up 3 runs. Sac fly from Marsh, scores Harper. Castellanos doubles to right. Real Muto and Bohm's. Baum or Bohm? Is it B-O-H-M? I'm going Bohm.
Alex Bohm?
Bohm. There we go. It's 3-0, and they head out winners. The finale today, PA, is going to be a nooner. And it's Aaron Nola. How about this series, by the way, where the Twins have had to try and survive through Suarez on Monday.
Yeah.
And it was Wheeler last night. And now, no big deal, Nola in the mix versus Steven Okert at noon. But hoping for the rubber match to go the right way for the Minnesota Twins as they continue on out of this break here. Some struggles against a couple NL teams.
And with Carlos Correa hitting the DL, and it's not that long, but with him hitting the DL, it jacks up, a lineup that can score. So they come out of the break, they score 4 and lose. Then they score 7 and lose. Then they score 7 in the Suarez game and they win. But then they just could not get around on Zach Wheeler last night. Now, Aaron Nola is crafty, and the pitcher for us, Okerts, I believe.
Okert, yeah.
Yeah, he so the Twins are doing the opener bit today. I believe when they use him,
I believe you're correct.
It's the inning bit. I think he got tagged last time too. So these Phillies in the NL East are putting the pedal to the metal right now. The Mets keep beating the Yankees, or I think they're 3-0 against them this year, but they beat them yesterday. And the Braves are trying to get healthy, and they lose Acuna for the year. Matt Olson is barely hitting his weight, if he's even hitting his weight. So they need a resurgence from him. But this Phillies team is super sneaky in trying to get to the World Series if your LA Dodgers don't make it.
And the Twins being 5 back in the division. You mentioned Okert. Yeah, he averages about 2/3 of an inning pitch per outing. So Okert not expected to go long today. And then it's off to the road. They're going to be at Detroit and then at the Mets. So some games coming up and some winning opportunities for the Minnesota Twins. You're really worried about Aaron Nemhard of the Pacers, his contract status. He re-upped with the Pacers.
Yeah.
You've been waiting all morning to hear that update. Links on the chill until like middle of next month. We got the Olympics coming up. Team USA, although they made it weird and made it close against South Sudan, they start games that actually count on Sunday against Serbia, then South Sudan next week, Puerto Rico August 3rd. So really right now it's about the baseball team and it's about the Minnesota Vikings. And it's about training camp, PA. And when we come back, thank you, News to North, thank you, The Casino at Canterbury Park. I got some Camp cuts on some things happening around the NFL. Excited to bring it up with you.
All of it via 9 to noon at FM 100.3 KFAN.